Hi, Harry here with the Rant on Friday, November 1st. I'm doing this from Austin as I'm traveling. Now, I want to step back, and the newsletter is also coming out this morning, so there's going to be plenty of information here. So I'd like to really step back and just look at this time and how unique it is. I mean, this is definitely going to go down in history, decades from now. Not only do we have the greatest boom in history driven by the baby boom, which I was basically the first to identify. It was that simple, 46-year lag for peak spending of this giant generation. But also, one of my other cycles clicked in, the technology innovation cycle. That's a 45-year cycle. The generation cycle is about 39 to 40. So these happen to both come together and peak together in the roaring 20s in 1929. But this time, you had the demographic cycle peak much earlier, the baby boom spending wave in late 2007, right on cue. But the technology cycle has kept humming and would naturally peak, late 2019, early 2020-ish, okay? And that's where we can see that even with both of these huge and dominant cycles in the economy, natural, fundamental cycles peaking, the stock market still and the economy kept going up now into late 2024. So they have stretched this boom beyond any imagination, and I think that it's finally stretched to the point where it has to break, okay? So again, a natural cycle. I say, what would happen if the Fed had not come in central bank deficit and government deficits with 27 trillion in stimulus in the last 15, 16 years? What would have happened? I think we would have had a major peak in 2007, a major downturn, and we would have come back with that technology cycle and had a second peak either around the same level and maybe higher, okay? But it wouldn't have been like this, 3.7 times. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ are 3.7 times higher than they were at the 2007 peak. So obviously, this stimulus combined with the technology cycle, which has not been as prevalent in history as the demographic cycle, because, I don't know, it just seems to be that's the way it is. It is being very strong now. So that's what we'd expect. So this is a unique time. We have to see what happens here. They finally had to tighten because they overreacted to COVID. And remember, out of that 27 trillion, the biggest part of it, 11 trillion, came just in the last few years since COVID. So that's what caused this final surge into late 2024. That's the one that is totally off the charts. None of my cycles would support that, okay? So here we are, and this finally looks like it's turning down, and the market started to go down yesterday, and we may have seen a top. So let's stay tuned. Now, if you look at bubbles historically, and of course this is the longest and greatest, what they traditionally do is they go back to where the bubble started, okay? So that, to me, this final bubble, this second bubble, started in 2009 when they really stepped on the stimulus and began this 27 trillion trek. So if we go back there, now we got to all remember, I have to keep reminding people how dramatic this is, just to go back there, okay, would mean now, since it's gone higher, 90% drop in the S&P 500, 94% in the NASDAQ. And it is possible, I've shown lately in updates, that we may get one more surge here, then that might be up to 95% of the NASDAQ. But I mean, this is greater than the 29 to 32 crash, equal or greater. And nobody suspects this because the Fed has trained and central banks have trained people. We got it. We have the economy's back. We will not let it go down. Well, you have to look back at reverse and say, who created this last bubble? Single-handedly. Past bubbles were great economies like the roaring 20s, okay? Or the 90s and then into 2007 and 2020 with the technology cycles, okay? The economy created them and investors overreacted in bubble. But this one was totally created. We would not have had this boom and to this level and now even 3 years beyond the longest stretch without this stimulus. So that's why I say The Fed and the central banks have to fail here. They finally tightened because they overreacted to COVID. That was their big mistake if they want to keep this bubble going. And now people, they just barely 50 basis points, and now they're not even sure they're going to do much more here for a while. I think they're going to be behind the curve because this bubble is so large. And when debts start defaulting, and that will happen, and that's what I'm waiting on, okay? We've seen the tightening cycle, but we haven't seen a major debt default. That's what's going to wake things up, and that's likely to happen in time. But I don't see how the Fed can stop this slide. They may be able to cushion it some. We are going to have to play this one, just stay with it and see what happens and be cautious while it happens, because we've never had a bubble that was entirely created by the central banks and government deficits, and we've never had one that we know they will fight tooth and nail with. They'll put everything behind this. I'm just saying I think they'll be too late. So I'll keep you updated.